When I was growing up, my world felt small, like a single room with the windows closed. I lived in a quiet town where everyone knew everyone, where dreams were whispered carefully so they would not sound foolish. I was a curious child. I loved books, loved listening to people talk, loved the rhythm of stories even when I did not fully understand them. But there was one thing that stood between me and the bigger world I imagined in my mind. That thing was English. English felt distant, like a river on the other side of a forest I did not know how to cross. I heard it in movies, on the radio, sometimes from tourists who passed through our town. Their words flowed smoothly, confidently, like music. When I tried to repeat those words, they felt heavy in my mouth. I worried about my accent. I worried about making mistakes. I worried that people would laugh. At school, English was just another subject on the schedule, another book on the desk. But to me, it felt like a locked door. I could memorize vocabulary. I could study grammar rules. Still, when it came time to speak, my mind froze. My heart beat faster and my voice became quiet. I told myself that English was not for people like me. I believed that some people were born to speak it, and others were not. Then something happened that changed everything. One evening, my father came home late. His face looked tired, and his shoulders were heavy. We sat together at the table, eating in silence. Finally, he told us about a man at his workplace who had fallen very sick. Doctors had tried to help, but communication had been difficult because the patient spoke little of the local language, and the specialist who could help spoke only English. That delay had cost precious time. That night, I could not sleep. I kept thinking about that story. I thought about how words could save time and how time could save lives. For the first time, English did not feel like a school subject. It felt like a bridge. It felt like a key. From that moment, I made a quiet promise to myself. I would learn English, not to impress anyone. Not to sound smart, but to understand and to be understood. I did not say this promise out loud. I was afraid I might fail. But deep inside, something had shifted. I started small. I listened more than I spoke. I watched English movies with subtitles and then without them. I paused scenes and repeated sentences, copying the emotion, not just the words. I listened to podcasts while walking, while resting, while doing chores. At first, it felt overwhelming. The words came too fast. My brain felt tired. But slowly, very slowly, things began to change. I noticed that I could understand the general idea of a conversation, even if I missed some details. I noticed that my ears were learning before my mouth did. This gave me hope. One day at school, a new English teacher arrived. She had studied abroad and spoke with a calm confidence that immediately caught my attention. She did not laugh at mistakes. She welcomed them. She said mistakes were proof that we were trying. Those words stayed with me. During one class, she asked a simple question and looked directly at me. My heart raced. I could have looked away. I could have pretended not to hear. But something inside me pushed forward. I answered. My sentence was not perfect. My grammar was wrong. But I spoke. The room stayed quiet. No one laughed. The teacher smiled and nodded. She gently corrected me and asked me to try again. I did, and the second time felt easier. That moment, small as it seemed, became a turning point. I realized that fear shrinks when you face it. Around that same time, another dream began to grow inside me. I wanted to become a doctor. I had always been interested in science and the human body, but now that interest felt more serious. I imagined myself helping people, listening to their stories, easing their pain. I also learned that many of the best medical resources, research papers, and training programs were in English. Suddenly, English and medicine became connected in my mind. One could not exist without the other. If I wanted to become the doctor I imagined, English was no longer optional. It was essential. I studied harder. Not just for exams, but for understanding. I read medical articles written in simple English. At first, each page took a long time. I kept a notebook where I wrote new words and phrases. I practiced explaining complex ideas in simple language, even if only to myself. There were days when I felt discouraged. Days when my pronunciation sounded wrong, when my sentences felt awkward, when I wanted to give up. But I remember that night when my father told his story. I remembered why I had started. By the time I finished school, my English was still not perfect, but it was strong enough to carry my thoughts. I could express myself. I could ask questions. I could learn. And that was enough to take the next step. When I applied to medical school, the entrance process was challenging. Interviews were partly in English. Reading materials were in English. For the first time, I saw how far I had come. The language that once scared me was now opening doors. The day I received my acceptance letter, I held it in my hands for a long time. I did not shout. I did not celebrate loudly. I simply sat quietly and smiled. I knew this was only the beginning. Medical school was a different world. The workload was heavy. The expectations were high. Lectures moved fast, and textbooks were thick with information. Many of my classmates struggled with the English material, just as I once had. But because I had spent so much time listening, reading, and practicing, I was prepared in a way I had not expected. I was not the smartest student in the room. But I was patient. I was persistent. And I was not afraid of English anymore. As the months passed, I found myself helping classmates understand difficult concepts by explaining them in clear, simple English. Teaching others helped me learn even more. It also showed me that language was not about perfection. It was about connection. By the end of my early years in medical school, something became clear to me. Learning English had not just changed my education. It had changed the way I saw myself. I was no longer someone standing outside a closed door. I was walking forward, step by step, into a much bigger world. The first time I wore a white coat, it felt heavier than I expected. Not because of the fabric, but because of what it represented. Responsibility. Trust. Years of effort. As I looked at myself in the mirror, I did not just see a medical student. I saw the child who was once afraid to speak a single English sentence out loud. Clinical training brought new challenges. This was no longer about books alone. This was about people. Real people with real pain, fear, and hope in their eyes. Communication became just as important as medical knowledge. Listening carefully mattered. Choosing the right words mattered. In the hospital, English appeared everywhere. Patient records, research updates. Visiting specialists from other countries. Some patients even preferred to explain their symptoms in English because they had learned the language through travel or work. In those moments, I realized how valuable my journey had been. One particular patient stays in my memory. He was older, with tired eyes and a gentle voice. He had lived abroad for many years and felt more comfortable speaking English than the local language. Other staff members struggled to understand him fully, and he felt frustrated. When I entered the room and greeted him in English, his face changed. He relaxed. He spoke freely. He told me not only about his symptoms, but about his life, his worries, his family. That conversation gave me important clues that helped guide his treatment. Afterward, he thanked me, not just for the medical care, but for listening. That moment touched me deeply. It reminded me again that language is not just a tool. It is a bridge between human beings. As my training continued, I began reading international medical journals regularly. I attended seminars led by doctors from different parts of the world. I asked questions without fear. I shared ideas. English allowed me to be part of a global conversation about health and healing. Of course, the journey was not always smooth. There were moments when I misunderstood instructions. Moments when I struggled to explain something clearly under pressure. But instead of feeling ashamed, I treated these moments as lessons. Each challenge helped me grow stronger. Outside the hospital, people sometimes asked me how I managed to learn English so well. They expected a secret method or a special trick. I always smiled and told them the truth. There was no magic. Only time, effort, and the courage to keep going even when it felt uncomfortable. I told them that learning a language is like learning medicine. You do not master it overnight. You study. You practice. You make mistakes. You improve. And most importantly, you remember why you started. The day I officially became a doctor, my family stood proudly beside me. My father's eyes were full of emotion. I thought back to that evening long ago when he told us about the man who could not be helped in time. In a quiet way, I felt that I had honored that story. Now, as a practicing doctor, English continues to be part of my daily life. I use it to stay updated with the latest research. I use it to communicate with colleagues from around the world. Sometimes, I even use it to comfort patients who feel more at ease in that language. But beyond professional success, English gave me something even more important. It gave me confidence. It taught me that limits are often imagined. It showed me that with patience and persistence, doors can open where walls once stood. When I speak to young students today, especially those who feel afraid of English, I see myself in their eyes. I tell them that it is okay to be scared. It is okay to speak imperfectly. What matters is the willingness to try. I tell them that learning English does not mean losing who you are. It means gaining another way to share who you are with the world. And sometimes, that ability can change not only your own life, but the lives of others as well. Looking back, I realized that I did not just learn English and become a doctor. I became a person who believes in growth. A person who understands the power of communication. A person who knows that every big journey begins with a small, brave step. If you are listening to this story right now and wondering whether learning English is worth the effort, let me tell you this. You never know where that journey might lead. It might lead you to a new career, a new dream, or a new way of seeing yourself. I share stories like this every day. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one.